Good evening and welcome to The Square. Tonight's discussion is going to focus on three things that have been trending on our social media feeds in the last 2 weeks based on a couple of incidences. And these are culture, morality, and art. Where does one draw the line between these two issues? We'll also take a look at African modernization as well as transgenerational communication between older and younger generations. Tonight's debate is part of a wider societal discourse, and joining the show tonight to shed more light on this is Rosemary. Rosemary Mukarutabana is a Rwandan cultural scholar, and thank you for honoring our invitation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Dana Mpisi. I'm the host of The Square. I'm also joined by The Square's lovely resident panelists, Berna Namata.
Thank you, Dana.
Welcome to the show. Ephraim Rwangwenge.
Thank you for having me. How are you?
Good, great to have you. And also on my right, Charles Haba.
Hi, how are you, Diana?
Good, always a pleasure to have you.
Same here.
Like we always do before we kick off, we are going to just have a midweek recap on some highlights in the week so far. I'm going to start with you, Charles.
Well, just before the show began, I saw a property that is being auctioned, a hotel, and it disturbed me because there's a bit of a disconnect in between what we are saying and what's happening on the ground. We're telling people build more hotels, MICE tourism is here, we want to do this, but when you look at the number of hotels that are up for auction, you ask yourself there must be something that's extremely wrong in this sector. I know of somebody who RDB and whoever cared to point their fingers at the property said that it was not up to scratch. They closed it down for standards. The owner of the facility said, thank God they have closed down my hotel to standards. I mean, because he was able to sell it off and it's about to become an office block. Yeah. Another person, again, in the Remera area, big hotel, I think about 48 rooms. You go there today, they are all offices. Yeah. And, you look at these reports, we have this shortage in number of rooms, we are pushing MICE tourism, but nobody wants to go into hotels.
So your solution, what you're stating is that in the MICE tourism, the issues of hotels being invested in.
No, I think it's just a disconnect between what the strategy is and the reality on the ground. The truth of the matter is there's just no money to be made in hotels.
Interesting take.
Yeah. I think for me, I would want to obviously comment on that, but I'll have to pick my news. And I think I would want to go with some interesting news that affects, I feel like I've complained about this for the longest, or at least I've complained about a degree of it. Recently, Bank of Kigali announced their annual results. I don't know if it's annual or quarterly results, but one of the things that they also mentioned was some new changes. They're increasing the cap on unsecured loans from 10 million francs to 30 million francs. Obviously, there are conditions involved, but that's a threefold increase, and that's good news for at least a lot of business owners,
especially
a lot
the
of
private
individuals.
Sector.
Yeah, I mean,
it's music to your ears.
It's
in particular.
I think, yeah.
Let's be honest.
Yeah, no, I'm serious. It's music to my ears because regardless of circumstance, I'm still a young entrepreneur. My business is still young. I don't have collateral that can support my business in the millions and millions of francs. So I need support wherever I can get it. So 30 million francs as unsecured financing, even if I have to top up with something else somewhere else to get more, it's still a benefit. Obviously, I know the bank is still a bank and they're still going to ask me to go through the due diligence process, but I feel like that's a good move in the right direction.
Brenna, news of the week? News of the week.
I'm tempted to talk about the other side of the risk appetite, but not for today. For me, it's the CFTA. It's been a long and painful process for most people who worked behind the scenes to get countries to sign up to the obvious. I mean, the benefits are very clear, but for some reason, we had countries that were dragging their feet. So to see it finally happening, well done to everyone, who had to, I know that so many people had to go to so many countries, trying to convince politicians to back the agreement. So to see it finally coming to life, it's a good thing. Of course, the key challenge that remains will be implementation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And Nigeria is on board
No.
already?
Not
yet?
yet.
No, not yet.
Not yet.
No, it's going to take some time.
It's going to take some time, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Rosemary, thank you very much for honoring our invitation. I think
Welcome.
when we thought of this discussion, we thought let's have someone that would shed some more light on this particular topic. So, my first question is to do with culture, art, and morality, and the Square panelists will chip in later. But the question is first addressed to you. So, we know slightly over a week ago there was an uproar on social media when nude pictures of a young lady surfaced. And there were calls from an official to have the Rwanda Bureau of Investigation look into this matter. Some Rwandans on social media called the lady mentally unstable, and others actually engaged in debates that claimed nude images warranted rape. So there's some rape apology as well going on social media.
Invited rape. That's what they were saying. She's invited.
Exactly. And similarly, last year we saw a local female musician castigated by civil society organizations based on a music album she released that apparently didn't uphold traditional Rwandan values. So in modern day Rwanda, it seems that the line between what is culture and morality, these lines are increasingly unclear, especially between younger and older generations. The question is broad-based, but I'll put it forward to you. How do you think one should navigate between these three things, culture, Rwandan values, and morality?
Well, normally you shouldn't need to navigate. They are together. That is, values, what a culture creates. And once it creates those values and leaves them, then people on that basis develop artistic expression and so on. So there is no separation. Unless you mean, for example, that girl who was naked, did she want to express
Art.
something? Art.
So to speak, yes.
That's what she's saying. But yeah, there are people who undress, but the streakers, that sort of movement. But I think everybody thinks it's just a bit of foolishness and not culture, not cultural expression. What are you creating when you are naked? In any case, the point is that a culture which belongs to a nation, for example, is something that nation finds very important. You know, they are very sensitive and they get very upset if they think you're spoiling the culture. Do they have a right? That's the question. For members of that culture to impose or demand certain behaviors, or are they only limited to suggesting? And that's a good point to discuss. But those three, the culture belongs to them as well.
That's very interesting. Flipping this question back on its head, so to speak, they're not mutually exclusive.
I think I want to put Madame Rose to remind her that we are also people here. And she said that everybody thought that the lady was foolish. I did not think she was foolish.
I didn't. I don't think so either.
Yeah, so I just want to make it very clear to you, Madame Rose, that maybe it is the people you hang with or who are around you that thought she was stupid. But
no.
You said foolish. She said foolish.
Yeah.
You said foolish. I didn't think she was foolish.
Silly, let's say.
Yeah, and
Why?
neither did I think she was silly.
Why? Okay.
But I think we need to appreciate, and this is where the biggest dilemma really comes in, that when you look at a lady who has chosen to put her own pictures on her own Instagram page, that fine is viewable to everybody else out there. It's up to her. I am not big on Instagram. I'm big on other social media platforms, but I will make a choice to dress like this or similarly like this because of the nature of the job that I do. And the way I would like to be perceived and portrayed out there. Now, here is a lady who is business, be in the showbiz business.
Her reasons to
Might be aspiring to of modeling. I am 100% sure she knows that there isn't 1% of Nyabihu residents who are on Instagram. So I think let's just appreciate where she comes from. And I think Express is a musician. we live in an extremely competitive world in as far as art is concerned. If you're going to do any other ordinary thing, if you're going to produce and release any other ordinary video, nobody is going to watch it.
You know,
I just very quickly, I like, because when Charles raised the point, Madame Rose was like, why? You said something about foolishness, and you wanted to contextualize it. Can you shed some more light on that?
Yeah, foolish because she, in my view, she did not recognize that while she's promoting herself for a particular purpose and public, she failed to recognize that she's a Rwandan, and she belongs to that culture. And people are going to object. So I don't think she was provocative or nasty or offensive on purpose. I think she was a bit silly in the sense that she did not realize that Rwandans wouldn't like that. Yeah,
Some Rwandans. I think it's extremely important that that keeps rubbing in.
Rwandans in general. And I think you also maybe acting the devil's advocate. I don't think you'll be naked on Instagram.
I think
it's just for discussion that you're saying that.
No. You're absolutely right, Madame Rose.
You will go out and expose yourself, knowing that there are
Madame Rose, you're absolutely right.
Madame Rose, we'll come back to you later. Okay. I want these guys to weigh in. Very quickly.
So there are two things for me I want to say. So one, the first one is, okay, there's an argument of agency, but there's also an argument of gender.
Okay.
I have not yet heard anybody mention men in this conversation in terms of men who have, quote unquote, violated culture. But men do it. I'm being very serious. There's a young artist, and I'm not going to mention his name. After he saw the uproar on social media from what had happened with the young lady, he also posted his own.
You don't have to hide because it was there for everyone to see that Eric won.
I don't want to promote. Apparently, I'm promoting things that are not cultural.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Just tell the truth.
So he posts his own pictures. Where has there been a call for action? And I think for me, there's a double standard when it comes to gender.
Yeah.
We always want to police women
Of course.
about this. Now let's come back to the question of agency. Charlie mentioned agency, and he mentioned at the end of the day, people have a choice to make. Now I think from a legal perspective, and I don't know the intricacies of the law around public indecency, but how is an account? I'm coming to my point. But how is an account on social media public? What's the jurisdiction of this? You know, like who governs and says?
I think that the predated, because it has to factor in what you're saying. We're netizens. We're a culture of social media.
Exactly. And
so
in this day and age, there's nude art.
Yeah.
So are we going to say that those artists who are, because we are on social media and we see this stuff, are we going to say that those artists are committing a crime in Rwanda?
But nude art and nakedness.
No, but if you have seen, you see, and if you look at her, pictures, if you look at her pictures, one can argue because art is subjective.
Yep.
Somebody can look at this and say, "Oh my gosh, this is art," because at the end of the day, that's what it is. So even when we try to sit down and we try to create almost a guidebook and a rule book on what is culture, what is this, what is that. That's why she was mentioning navigating, is that it's not as black and white as people want to think. It's not as clear as saying, oh, she posted nude pictures, she's Rwandan, it's in the Rwandan, varying degrees of gray before you arrive at that point. And I think
him on the gender bias, and we continue to see this in almost all aspects. Everything around the woman always attracts attention, and I don't know why.
I know why.
Two, I would like to disagree. For me, when I looked at the pictures, I didn't see them in any way as
indecent nudity.
No, it's art. Three, I think we have to accept the reality that there is an intergenerational communication gap. We express ourselves in different ways. There's a time when there was no social media. There's a time when we couldn't even talk about the creative industry. Now, when we talk about the creative industry, there's a lot around it. So how we navigate culture and also be able to promote creativity, the creative industry, because so far, again, you see limitations because we try to promote what is culturally acceptable. And now, as far as I know, creativity and conformity
They
never.
go hand in hand.
Yeah. So, and if we try to promote a culture where people have to conform to social, social values and society expectations, it doesn't work. I think we need to spend more time worrying about how the artistic people, how the creative people can be in safe places. And once you guarantee safe places for them, then you don't have to worry about what happens when they're there.
Safe places.
Okay, Mary, Rosemary, what's your take on all this?
Well, I think artistic expression, in all cultures, I think it is frequently accepted that artists are a bit, leave them be, they're artists. But how far would a Rwandan girl go if her artistic expression is her own nakedness, not, maybe not a painting, she herself.
But it's because you see it as nakedness.
No, so I want to just...
She's not naked? She wasn't naked?
No, but I
I
want
saw art.
Ah, okay. So this is the point. We have to know, we have to decide what we do with the societal acceptance or rejection. How do we handle that? Because if people think that a naked woman is indecent exposure, then she will not prosper with the public. And if you want to express, art is expressing yourself, but you also have a public. People have to appreciate or at least be interested. And if it's total rejection, you can express yourself in your studio.
If I could just respond to that, you see, the challenge I'm trying to highlight is that, yes, you need to promote the culture, and we need creativity. Now, I don't think, and I stand to be corrected, I don't think when she had the professional photographer do the pictures, she was just targeting the Rwandan audience. So when we respond to her and we criticize her for creating art for the Rwandan audience, I think we're missing the point.
But at the same time, I'd like to weigh in here as we go back and forth with Madame Rosemary. I think at the end of the day, there are two camps, and the purpose of this conversation tonight is to see how do these camps get together and talk without really adverse effects on the subject. Of the people who have the right to say that what this young lady did was just outright scandalous and non-Rwandan, because it happened within the Rwandan sphere, as our guest is saying. You can't do one thing and not expect some provocation on this other end. And then the other Rwandans, a majority of who are young, who was saying that side eye, but the majority of Rwandans who also think that she has every prerogative to do what she wants to do with her body. So the question here is going between the two. But I'd like to just shift a bit, Rosemary, in terms of some people on social media were saying some of these discussions are not really to do with culture. It's to do with Christianity.
And that's
not Rwandan culture. Because when you look at women in the past, Rwandan women in the past, we have pictures where they were semi-nude. And the society was okay with it. It was not sexual in nature. It did not warrant rape, as some apologists on Twitter have been saying. So if we did this culturally in the past, why is there some sort of moral policing around it? And I want to ask from your perspective as a Rwandan cultural scholar and expert, what's your take on these issues being a matter of Christianity and not Rwandan cultural values?
I don't think it was accepted to be naked. There were parts of the body that were okay. You could show them. For example, you could breasts were not considered to be sexual, but in a certain context, of course, you wouldn't expose yourself publicly. But if you were, you were in the home and so on, breasts were okay. They were not sexualized, overly sexualized. What was considered sexual was, for example, in Hege, the back of the legs. These are varieties of. But you see, once people start dressing, covering themselves up and so on. Then it becomes something else now to undress. If people were in a culture where they don't dress so much, it was okay. But now it is not a matter of Christianity, it's just that the whole world is dressed. There is nobody, even the Muslims are even more dressed than the Christians. You understand? So I don't think we can go back to that. It will not be
that point
accepted.
is not valid.
But I wanted
Yes,
to just weigh in on that.
Okay.
I think for me, we lack to discuss, or we fail to define what Rwandan values are, and what are we trying to defend. And I'll give you context in relation to this. Culture is dynamic. Whether I think this was the first thing I was taught in social studies.
In culture school.
Yeah, it's called culture school. It was called social studies. They
fluid.
They said culture is dynamic and it's always changing because culture is a way of life and societies adapt to times. Now like we said, traditionally, historically, like you said, women would move without tops. Then there came a time when now women started to dress more and cover up, men as well. Then it reached a point where now we are going back where people are like, nudity is a form of expression. It's an art form. The question would be, why don't we allow ourselves to evolve with the times? What are we truly trying to defend? And that was her question. She says, what is the basis of one, what are we trying to defend, and what is the basis of that defense?
Can you please answer that?
Well, you see, the culture is dynamic, of course. We're not behaving the way our parents and grandparents behaved. But the point is that if you are not dressed because people don't dress in your community or environment, it's not the same as a situation where everybody is dressed and then you undress, thinking that you're projecting something artistic, because people will immediately sexualize your act, even if you didn't mean to. There is an example. There is a woman, a Rwandan woman, married to a Belgian, and they went on holiday in Brussels. They were working in Africa, and then the following day they stayed with the man's mother in her flat, and then the following day she got up as she usually did, with no clothes. She went to the kitchen to get her coffee, and then came and sat in the dining room and so on. And the kids ran to the parents in the bedroom. Daddy, Mommy, Grandma has no clothes. And then, of course, the wife, told her husband that she cannot stay in that house because of the children. The husband said, "But why? Mommy, Mommy is always naked. She always does that." They said, No. I cannot expose my children to a grandmother who is indecent. Okay, so it's all a matter of cultural context, because a woman in her environment she was naked, but she didn't think it mattered.
But from the perspective of the kids, think about it. These kids are like mommy and daddy. Granny is without clothes. In that moment, the parents are the ones that determine the barometer of whether this thing gets sexualized or not. And I'm being very honest.
But Efrain, you're assuming because the kids probably ran terrified already.
But my point being is kids are impressionable. Yes. I don't have kids, but probably Charlie can attest to this.
But I'm sure they're socialized already at that point.
Exactly. So what normally happens is that in those moments, this is what I think the question that keeps coming forward is that, why are we making it such a big deal? What are we really trying to defend?
Okay, so we haven't answered that.
Yeah.
Yes.
We are trying to defend what people, Rwandans and many others, think is to be protected. A woman's body. You were asking about a woman's body. A man, if he, for example, you go out with your trousers but nothing on top, you are not really naked.
If I took off my pants?
Bamburi is nakedness,
nakedness.
Obvious nudity. Why? Because you don't have breasts. Full stop. That's all.
But
why are breasts to be hidden? We need to discuss that.
You know what I like? What I like, I'll give it to Charlie just a bit because it's been quiet. What I really like about you, Rosemary, is that I think in the questions that you're answering, you're not even going, and we'll get into what Rwandan traditional values are, but what I appreciate about how you're answering the question is just on a simple, practical level. It's practical. She's not delving into you know.
But we, I
Anthropology.
mean, for me, the question is
or interpretation. It's they're practical reasons. Charles, very
I want to
quickly.
say something, and at the risk of this degenerating into an Isimbi Noelina affair, because the problem is actually much bigger than that.
Absolutely, yes.
It's that we as Rwandans, generally speaking, and this is a lot to do with what Bana was talking around a safety place. Artists who perform a choreography dance that requires that one body moves in very close proximity to the other may be highly misjudged in our society. We have cases of female comedians who cannot tell jokes about sex because the audience will misjudge them. And we can give very many examples until the cows come home. So therefore, where I'm coming from with this is that we need to probably begin by educating the Madame Rosemary's of this world. That the generation of your children and your grandchildren do not think like you and your parents and your grandparents.
I didn't think like my parents either.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's one point. That the biggest education that needs to be taken to the complainants. That's point number one. Point number two is, you see, when you look at the reason why we're having this discussion is because people, quite a huge section of people, liked what they saw. The beautiful lady is endowed. She, you know, if I was muscular, I would be coming to the office every time with tight clothes and what to show off my muscles. And so on and so forth. So if God has gifted you,
Show it off.
yes, just as simple as that. And lastly, before Bana jumps in, I know she's itching to do that. I want to give again the lady credit on two fronts, and this is direct reaction to what Madame Rosemary said. In the pictures, she had the audacity to remember that her nipples are not supposed to be seen. At least let's give her credit for that. Then the rest were just other parts of the body.
You said let's not generate in making this about her.
Yes.
I think
but I've closed my case on
her chapter.
her.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Yeah, Brenna, very quickly.
I want to move it away from the figures.
Nipples.
And talk about the reality of the world. You know, like you said, she was talking about the reality. The reality is your generation and perhaps the generation before have no tools whatsoever to control what's happening. So what we essentially need to do is to think about, now that it's happening, so what?
And this
What
is
are we
just
going
the
to
tip
do?
of the iceberg, I
Yes,
think.
yes, and this is just the beginning. What are you going to do? Because, well, the Rwandan laws may limit, but as we have seen with the internet, it has democratized everything. She will be in Brussels or wherever it is and spread the gospel. So my question to you is, as the custodians of our culture, what are the tools? How are you dealing with this?
Teaching, education. You see, you forget that we too rebelled against our parents' demands and so on. See, a culture has got to have some basics, you know, a kind of bedrock when it's constituted, you know, something that has been going on. But, you know, things change a bit, usually go back also after a while, you know, it's cyclical. But there has to be something that is recognizable as a Rwandan culture, otherwise we stop being a nation. I mean, maybe I'm exaggerating, but Rwandans have a way they see things. But now what we have to do is distinguish what is that bedrock and what are the things that can change, that are secondary and so on. For example,
yes,
decency is a very strictly respected virtue in Rwanda. You know, a woman has got to protect her body from indecent scrutiny and so on. She's not supposed to be to attract too much attention. Well, you attract attention, but not too much. You show, but not too much. This is the
So there's a level of humility as well.
So you have to be that way.
But I like
Otherwise,
this. You show, but not too much.
you
pick
say-
the
no,
word
no,
showing.
you suggest. No, no,
We're
you
missing the
suggest.
point.
Eh,
I think we're missing the point. And here's the thing.
Yeah.
If we say we are focusing on protecting women and girls, you know, and the focus is on the physical aspect,
Yes.
what are we have a big problem with rape. We have a big problem with defilement. How is it impossible that we don't have a culture that is stopping that?
I want
And
to-
perhaps that's where the focus should be.
Yes.
I want, to,
Ephraim,
I, want,
very
I want
quickly.
to add to this because
We haven't even got to part 2 of this show. so
exactly,
please,
but I feel like
let's
every time I've asked this is like probably like the 20th time I'm asking this. What are Rwandan values? We talked of
One
you talked
is-
of you talked
one
of the
is-
ba-
one
you
is
talked of the bedrock.
decency.
That's what I'm
Decency,
coming back to.
we
the
She's
say.
point.
getting to it. Yeah.
You mentioned the bedrock,
Okay.
and you mentioned decency. Where did that come from? And I think that is the main question, the source of that. Because historically, and we have said this, historically, and this can be, and even you probably even know this as well. At what point, and she asked this question, at what point did we start to adopt decency in its truest sense as Rwandans?
Always.
Now my point, but you see, you say always, but we brought a question forward about breasts. Then you said, yeah, but
No, at that time.
we're passed through,
At that-
we're passed through,
No, at that time they were not. They were not
exactly, they were not
signing
sexualized, and we've gone through a point where we covered them up. Now people want to remove, but I'm like, exactly the point. That when we talk of decency in its current form, it has changed, and we have to accept that there are certain things that we continue to hold true that are not right. And I'm coming back to this thing of values. The reason why young people seem to have a problem with with what we continue to preach as Rwandan values is because they infringe on what we have understood are human values. So when Rwandan values contradict with general values as people, I'll give you a simple example. You are saying decency is to protect a woman, but somebody says that because this girl has shown her pictures online, she needs to be investigated by Rwanda Investigation
that
Bureau
was excessive.
for indecency and possibly face some criminal
Yeah.
action against her. At what point are you protecting her by doing that? So what happens with young people? Young people look at that and they're like, there's a conflict. We have Rwandan values on one hand that our parents, one, have failed to explain to us where they come from. I don't even think our parents know where they come from. And they continue to uphold them. They try to defend them. On this other side, we are violating these other human values around taking care of somebody, protecting somebody. And you have them at a pedestal and you're telling children, choose. A child is going to be like, I understand these better than these.
What do you have to say to that, Madam Rose?
Well, I think it's usually these things were not explained. There were no lessons on. You just learned them as you go, and they told them this is. They told you as a child, this is done, this is not done. You know the do's and don'ts. This is not Rwanda. This is Rwanda. This is Rwanda. You learned it that way. But now maybe we need to, structure the culture and the traditions and the values and learn how to teach them, how to impart them. And I think you've heard of Indangagachiro. I don't know if you've studied them. You know, we have tried to sort of list the basic pillars of Rwanda tradition, and you can learn that. Now that we have books, and I think there are also syllabi that are coming, parents have to decide how to communicate.
I want us to go to the next topic, please. But we'll come back to you, Brenna. Yeah, in the interest of time.
Very briefly.
Yeah, okay.
I just wish that Rwandan values would protect the woman to the extent that she's not seen as a sex object. Because the problem that we have is when we see a woman as a sex object, then we have a problem with her nakedness.
But can I just say something, Brenna? I think that's trying to have your cake and eat it. Because two things. Number one, you want to see Rwandan women being able to do what they want, such as these nude pictures, because it's their right in this modern day and age, even though they're part of the Rwandan culture. You want that same Rwandan culture to come and protect this young Rwandan values, yet they go against the Rwandan culture. It's a bit either or. It's a bit either or.
I don't think so.
Let's go to the next.
We'll come back maybe at some point.
I want to talk about African modernization, and I think we can't have this topic without tying into this concept. So African modernization is a theory or a concept that posits modernization of African countries is based on westernization or Europeanization, so to speak. And ideally, African societies can develop democracy from within instead of simply mimicking the West. This disconnect that's happening between Rwandan youth, well, Rwandan generations, older to younger generations, is it because Rwandan younger generations are mimicking elements from the West without contextualizing, and therefore there's definitely going to be a disconnect. What are your thoughts on this? I'll start with you, Rosemary.
Young people always do that. They mimic, they imitate. Just as they imitate their parents, they imitate also the others, and they are attracted by what is new. And it's normal. There's nothing basically wrong with that, but it's mimicking. For example, if you think that culture, you know, this girl who is naked and whom most Rwandan think she's, except your generation apparently, she has broken the rules of culture, and then you say she has to be protected because you think maybe we've read that Americans and the Europeans protect people's right to express whatever they wish, so long as it doesn't kill anybody. Well, is it the reality? Can people do what they want? Absolutely. Or do they have to have limits? Who sets the limits? In our case, it's the culture. You know, these things may not be written, but there are things that are not done. Why? Because the people think that if you do this, then the Rwanda will lose its culture, and if it loses its culture, then it will not be able to prosper. And we are not the only ones. You see, there was a story the other day about a porn actress, Indian, and she was saying that when she was in America, which is where she was, the Indian community, or communities, wherever they are, they were so furious with her. They insulted her, they sent her hate mail and so on, and they insulted her in supermarkets. And she said, oh, you know, these people, it's because they are there, they want to preserve their culture, they don't want you to touch it, because otherwise they feel insecure and lost in the American society. That's a very good point. They think if they lose their culture, they will melt away and disappear, and you know. So culture has that thing, and young people, of course, rebel, which is their role. You know, otherwise everything will be so cast in stone that nothing will move, and it will be the old women. In all cultures, it's the women who maintain.
Actually, women are custodians of culture.
Yes.
Yeah. Also custodians of patriarchy, which is I think this is a conversation you need to have.
Oh, it's very interesting, yeah, because they are the ones who want, for example, the traditional Rwandan woman, wife, want her husband to be a kind of king in the home. Your children don't disturb daddy. Daddy, your seat, you know, he's served. Because it's in her interest. She wants him to be, you know.
Is that right?
Yes, there is all that.
My point, I think I want
he has to be the king, and we all have to be the servant.
But personally, do you agree with that?
I think so. It's the best for our men. Otherwise, they become.
But what do you think as a woman?
No, I agree with that, because you see, sorry, Ephraim. Ephraim here, if she has a wife and she mistreats him, or she doesn't respect him, she doesn't build him up, he will be weak.
The fragile ego will disintegrate.
Exactly. Fragile ego.
I'm not going to comment.
The men are patriarchal because the women set society that way. They want it to be like that.
Because women set society that way.
They want it to be that way.
So I really want to say something. You know, I'm not going to comment on that last bit because I don't want to, you know, set myself up for something and then I have to take it back. I'm single, so I don't know. But I think for me, around this modernization aspect, it comes back to what I said earlier. We are so exposed in society, at least as young people. We have access to the information from the rest of the world, how life is being done in the rest of the world, at our fingertips. And what normally happens is we see what seems to be a better way of life. we come to our parents
Seems to be.
and we say, kindly explain this. That's what I'm saying, seems, because we, to a certain degree, we respect our parents.
Yeah, I
We
hope
say,
so.
no, we try to. We try to honor our parents in a certain, to a certain degree, at least for the most part.
Yeah.
And you come and say, kindly explain this to me. This is what I saw. And most parents, the same language you just used about, it's their job to rebel. Instead of listening, to have a dialogue and a conversation, the assumption is, this child has just come to disturb me. Now, the same way you have the same conversation around, the same way you have the same, so the child was like, there's no case for this. They failed to explain why this is better. It's the same thing around patriarchy. So you find a lot of young girls see their mothers literally pour themselves out and give their lives to their men. And then they go see around the world.
Because without it, society would collapse.
No.
Based on the
No, you're saying that on the basis that she has explained it now.
No, yes.
But
Which
a young girl
with.
will jump on the internet, see
see
something,
that,
or go to school, or hang around people, get exposed to certain things. She'll come back, she will ask, Mom, why do you do this?
Yes.
And the mother will be like, your father needs it. Just leave me. I have to go prepare something.
It's because,
But that's what she's
it's
saying,
because
like
they don't
women
know how,
perpetuate-
yes, they want to, they know what should be done, but they don't know how to explain, because nobody explained to them when they were young. They just conformed, as you said. So you cannot ask a person who's never reflected objectively on the value of this thing to explain. We have to teach them. This is why we have this program of, the Academy has produced these Indangagaciro, where the traditional values, where you have to learn the meaning. For example, they say, oh, you don't say the name of your father-in-law or mother-in-law, Utsinda. Why? I say, no, but he's Michael. I know Michael. Okay, so, but because they didn't explain that, traditionally, marriage was an alliance between families or lineages, and you were the representative of that side, and you were in charge of that contract. You were the implementer. So you had to be very careful, very respectful, and not offend anybody, and so on. That was the idea, that you should be seen as always perfectly respected, and also very humble, as you said. Modesty, not physically now, but you you call it conformism, but cultural transmission is basically conformism.
Yes, and that's what the problem is.
We
need to go to a Twitter feed.
Okay.
Brenna, can I? Brenna has handled
Sorry,
me
my
today.
dear. They haven't let you express yourself.
No, but we'll get there. So our first tweet for this evening is coming from Isabel. And Isabel is asking, this just brings me back to the topic at hand, though. The society might be suffering from, one, communication issues between generations raised in different periods, susceptibility caused by social and economic influences. That's our first tweet for the day. We're going to go to a second tweet. And the second tweet is from Tom Patrick. And Tom Patrick says that we should enhance on protecting our language, as it has a big part in our culture. Modernization will always change some parts of our culture, but as long as we keep our language safe in terms of speaking, writing, and using in different arts, our culture will be not be forgotten. Wow. We're going to go to our next tweet, but I want you to weigh in on the issue of culture, language.
The issue of language reminds me of Oda Pass's song.
Language, yes. Well, of course, language is a vehicle.
Yes.
If you can't be a Frenchman if you don't speak French properly, or an Englishman. And a person who speaks, the language very fluently, but in a certain way that is not sophisticated, well, they assume that person is not cultured. She belongs to the culture, but her cultural level is low.
Or intelligent, actually.
Or even intelligent, yes. If you don't speak properly, people assume you're not bright, which is a pity.
It is a pity. Our next tweet is from Andrew Kazibwe, and Andrew states that I'm worried how people just have jumped onto the lately viral nude picture sharing culture. What if this is just a glimpse of it? So when the worst is going on out there and seen. So
very interesting.
Before we go to our next tweet, he's saying there's worse stuff happening out there.
No, you're focusing on the worst stuff. I feel like he's talking about a nude sharing picture. culture.
Culture.
And nurturing picture culture. What he's saying is that it might be worse out there where people
Well,
are
yeah.
focusing on just
Well,
one
these things
thing.
will come. You know, even
And
in
you
the old
haven't
days.
asked my question, which is
Our last tweet,
how
our
are
last
you,
tweet, Brenda.
how are you dealing with it?
Yes, we'll get there. Our last tweet is also from Andrew. I think our second last tweet. And Andrew states that shouldn't we more blame all this ongoing uncultured behavior among youth onto parents and parenting? And this is what we were just talking about previously. Do you believe that parenting is still a crucial aspect today, or people are just giving birth?
That's cold.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
That's very cold.
That's
yeah.
very cold.
Yes.
What do you
terrible.
think about that? Or you want to ask her your question? Yes, very quickly.
I'm curious.
My question hasn't been answered, which is, it is happening, whether you like it or not. So what? That hasn't been answered.
We'll answer.
Yes.
So what? In all cultures, there are periods where more or less large portion don't follow. You know, but it doesn't matter because the culture is still there, and people will eventually come back or in a modified form. It's happening, but it's only happening in a certain class of young Rwandans. Yeah.
Our next tweet is again from Andrew. Andrew is on a roll. Andrew is on a roll tonight. And Andrew's tweet states that what puzzles me is the word freedom of expression. I believe women can well express themselves even within dressing. But with decency, is it still oppressive?
Okay.
Yeah, you know, I think this, I want to relate with this. You know, sometimes you see a lady very smartly dressed.
A woman. Woman.
They've just checked you.
I will learn the difference after
woman
the
is a
show,
very good name.
Yeah. She's very well dressed. She's also fully covered.
Yes.
But sections of people will scrutinize to see that either it is very tight fitting, or
short,
or
or what?
You know, the cleavage is out there,
Yes.
or this and that and this and that. So I think it's very challenging to dress as a woman. Yeah.
But you know why?
And this brings us to our next tweet. Our next tweet, hold that thought. Our next tweet kind of echoes what you're saying, Charlie. And this tweet states that our culture and values are much beyond girls' bodies. He should have said women. Girls' bodies, and we do not have to keep focus on that. And I believe teaching girls the way they should dress or not being naked is to waste our time.
Absolutely.
Modernization is a big challenge.
Absolutely. And the reason we keep talking about nakedness is because we see women as sex objects.
It's the male gaze. It's the male gaze happening.
They just feel that, you know, when they look at you,
You're sexualized
you know,
immediately.
yes.
Of course.
And unless we stop, I mean, if you post your pictures, and no one is bothered, if that doesn't happen, or if we don't have people that are rushing to judge and be, you know, oh, you deserve to go to hell, and, you know, this has to stop.
But you see,
I think
it cannot stop, because if it stops, it will be like some Western countries where men are not allowed to look at women, you know, except in Canada, you know, you're supposed to look here. Well, I think it's a pity, because have you ever thought that nobody would marry, or very few, if there wasn't that attraction? Marriage is very hard, you know, living together with somebody is really, it can be very painful.
If you met the person during a power cut, there's no way you're going to see them.
Even if you, yes, because you see, if there wasn't that attraction, then it will be very difficult for people to decide coldly that I want to, you know, a partner to found a family and so on. So when men stop looking at women's breasts, for example, as you say, cleavages and so on, or shape, well, I'll be very sad. It will be, that would mean that Rwandan men will have died.
Let me clarify. Let me clarify. Okay, the looking I'm talking about is
I like that.
to make it a big deal.
But how can you be indifferent? If you look at a girl, you are attracted,
Brenda, I think you're
and
looking
you just
towards
pretend.
a society that's extremely asexual.
Yes, and you just
No. What I'm saying is, if you look at a woman and you admire her and you want to pursue, that's a private matter. That's a private matter. Okay.
Collectively,
It
as society,
shouldn't be a public issue. You
So
know?
there shouldn't be guardians of women's,
No,
decency
we
and so on.
simply
That's what you
have
are
to
saying?
stop making women's bodies a big deal.
It will not stop.
No, we
No,
have to
stop.
try.
Okay, can we go to a tweet? This is a tweet from Manny Martin. And,
Okay.
I think this is Manny Martin, the musician,
Yeah.
if I'm
Ah.
not
Yeah, it's
mistaken.
him.
And Manny Martin states that, in my opinion, we seem to confuse what we call Rwandan values with religion influence. We have come to a point
Absolutely.
where everything is judged according to one's religion. That has actually made us lose our own culture. This
Loaded.
religion and culture thing
Yes,
is...
it still
Very
comes
interesting.
comes
Very
up. Yeah.
interesting,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Very interesting. But if we hadn't been Christianized, would we think differently?
They would
Yeah.
still be naked, I think.
No, naked. No.
We used to be naked.
No, historically, if
But
you
just
look at
historically,
it,
based on that, this
Eh.
tweet, and this has to be our last tweet before we conclude, and this tweet says, it's talking about this historical thing. So apparently, Rwandese should not be protected if they participate in nude art. Kandi, when they're really going back to Rwandan roots. Kuvatera, from long ago, nudity wasn't a problem until the colonial
Thank
masters
you.
came
Yeah.
through.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's going to be part 2, 3, and 4 of this conversation.
Yeah.
I would like us
We
to
used to be
wind.
naked.
I would like us to
but
wind up.
You didn't sit with the boys. I mean, you have to be reasonable. Girls and boys didn't mix much.
But even
So you could see the guy maybe, but there was never a place where you could smooch with that guy. You know, you have to be reasonable.
I think
it just won't work.
You're just being very practical. Very quickly, if you can give closing remarks, I'll start with you, Charles.
Well, I think I've said it, and at the risk of repeating myself, we have to dance to the tune that that's where the world is going. That's where the world has taken us. Bana, like it or not, when we men look at girls that look good, whether
Women.
Even not good. No,
yes,
no,
as
actually means
females.
young. Those young.
Don't
yes,
infantilize.
No, it means young girls.
whether they are half full or however, we
Something.
like what we see. God has blessed you with
Amen.
parts of the body that are not shaped like ours.
And
I can
you
believe
work.
Please accept that we like what we see.
Uh-huh.
And by the way, we are not the only ones who like what we see. Even your fellow women, Bana,
Yes.
admire.
We admire. Yes.
Admire when there's a
Yeah,
nicely,
nice.
you know, I belong to like quite a number of WhatsApp groups, and the most extreme comments,
Always.
whether pro or anti
Always.
Noelines, were from the women.
Always.
Very quickly,
Yes.
and
Guardian.
so
Efren,
in
please-
very, very
please
short,
briefly, for our guests'
but
sake.
me, I can be brief. Let me be
Yes,
brief.
actually, it's Brian now. Anyway.
No, so I think for me, it comes down to, truthfully, what are we defending? And we have to be very clear, especially the people who want to defend it. Make your case. Because everybody else on the contrary side have made that case.
Yeah.
They've talked about women's rights, they've talked about this, they've talked about that. Also, you're on your side where you're like, we need to protect this. What are you protecting
Okay.
and why?
Okay.
Brenna, thank you, Efren.
I think I don't agree with Charles.
No, leave this conversation for another day. Just give us your parting shot.
I just feel that we should stop focusing on women's bodies. Women need a break. We are tired of being told what to wear, what we should look like, who we get married to. It has to stop. We need the space to be ourselves. Whether you marry or not, whether you're naked or not, we just need the space.
To be ourselves.
Yes.
Okay.
Interesting. Madam
But
Rosemary?
yes, I think
Your closing
yes,
remarks.
looking for demanding one's freedom of expression is very good, but you find that if society doesn't approve of you, you will not be happy. It's always like that. You have to fit in more or less, otherwise you'll be very unhappy. But also parents and older people have, and young people also, we have to learn our culture and reflect on it. Why do we think this is wrong? We really have to learn and learn to teach also.
Absolutely. I like that part about learning to teach older and younger generations as
Yes,
well.
everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Ephraim, Barna,
Thank you.
Charlie, and Madam Rosemary.
very
It
much.
was a very engaging and insightful discussion.
Indeed.
Very eye-opening and fun.
Yes.
We thank you for joining us. We've come to the end of the show. Please keep the conversation going on our social media feed, especially on Twitter using #TheSquareRW. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to thank our partners Uzi Collections and Bourbon Cafe, made in Rwanda, as always. Thank you for joining us. Have a good night and see you next week.
Thank you.